Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Muskan Sabharwal, and I'm the Global Professional Development Director at Impact Project. And before starting the panel discussion, we'd start with a brief introduction of the Impact Project. And secondly, we're very grateful for all the three panelists that we have with us on board here. So, for everyone in the audience, Impact Project, we are a student-led organization started by students of SRCC, and our main goal is to provide and develop and implement and provide consulting services to startups, non-profit organizations, and in order to implement the goal and the motive of development of consulting in India and for the student consultants as well. So our main goal is to provide strategic solutions with the aim of sustainability, and secondly, also empower our student community, that is, these consultants who work with us in this era. So as all of you are here for the sole motive of learning about what the EY scholarship is and what it holds for you and how it can benefit your future. So there's no one better who can advise you than the winners themselves. And EY scholarship, it's open to all the students of all the students of all the undergraduate streams, and it is a way that you can not only learn about how business and how cases that are resolved, you can also get a lot of professional development and experience by working in the EY themselves if you get selected as a winner. However, the process, it's not easy. You'll definitely be learning about it by the winners themselves. The overall process, it's very competitive with almost 11,000 plus students competing in 2021. And this does not, this is not to just ensure or in order to, in order to discourage you or anything. However, the process, like overall, it does require a lot of preparation. And this is why we are here. And this is why we have our panelists on board who will be guiding you regarding the same. So now I'd invite Manya to introduce you to our three panelists. And yeah, Manya, you can start.
Yeah, so to introduce our panelists for today, first off, we have Anirudh Arya, who is a final year BCom student from SRC at BCG and is the president of 18/20 Consultants. He has been associated and worked with organizations like Deloitte, the New India Assurance Company Limited, and BCG. Secondly, we have Shruti, who's a recent graduate from Hansraj College and is currently working as an analyst at Bain & Company. She's an avid non-fiction reader and has an interest in economics and finance. She is also the founder of Fine Point, started a blog that contains articles based on economics and finance. The blog has an international reach of 10 plus countries. Next, we have Shunyam, who's a final year BCom honors student from Gargi College and is the president of Enactus Gargi. She has been previously associated and worked with Deloitte USI, FAMPE, CRED, and METB, having a diverse set of experience. Thank you, Anirudh, Shruti, and Shunyam for joining us today. It is indeed our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it would be great if you could one by one in brief narrate your experiences with the EY scholarship process.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. Okay. So hi everyone. First of all, thank you for the Impact Project to invite me. It's always so nice to talk to people who are preparing for such things, because once I was in your shoes and I always wanted to talk to somebody who has won, and luckily I had a senior, and it is always really helpful. So first of all, I'd like to tell you that, you can make, so EY scholarship is basically, you have to make a business case. You have to present an idea, a sustainable idea, okay, this is a business, it will solve this problem, and this is how I'm going to implement things in my business. Okay, it can be a for-profit or it can be a not-for-profit. You can make both the kinds of business. So I made not-for-profit business model. I opted for it, as in my introduction, Manya told you, I'm interested in economics and finance. I'm really interested in economics. And when it comes to economics, it's most about the grassroots level people. So my idea was on farmers. My idea was how we can educate farmers on using banks rather than using informal sources of banking. Now it's very easy to say, okay, why would you use informal source of banking? You don't have banks. But what if you still have banks? What if you're still not using the formal sources of banking? And it is one of the, okay, why farmers? Now that is the first question that arises. Farmers, because rural India is almost 70% of our country, and farmers employ workforce of more than 155 million people. Like, you can imagine how many people are stuck in farming. Now I am using the word stuck because it's not that profitable. We all know how farming is a difficult venture because of funds, because of getting funds for irrigation, for seeds, for fertilizers. And the sahukars, or the money lenders in villages, charge double digits interest rate, where from bank you can get it in single digits, very like minimal, from Kisan credit card and all. So I'm from a very small town, like my hometown. It's in Rajasthan. And what I have seen around me was people giving 25% for something, for a loan that they could get in 4% or 3%. And I was furious. Why is this happening? So that is how my idea originated. I was like, somebody needs to tell them. Now I will not go in much detail because this is just an introductory thing. So my idea was about a not-for-profit organization who teaches farmers, who educates farmers on the policies of the government, on how and why they should use formal sources of banking, and how they would uh, be more better off in those situations. That is the gist of my idea.
Lovely. I'll go over next. Glad to hear what Shruti also said. Glad to hear the idea of another candidate at the same competition. And first of all, pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Manya, Midan, and team, for organizing this one. Because I think there was always a need, as our DMs were pouring in with questions, there was a dire need to actually, be there, share your experiences, and talk about what could you actually inculcate in your journey. I'll just start about how I came across my idea, how I came across EY Scholarship. EY Scholarship, I got to know about, I think, through placement cells, through opportunities like that, or just through their Instagram page because I was following them. And once I got to know about it, it's a little funny, but I prepared for it in like a 2 to 3 day stint. It was, I think the deadline was 31st December. I started off at 30th December or 29th December. And what happened was the idea didn't really strike me in a way that, in a very typical way that you sit and you think and you ponder deep enough, hard enough to, for that eureka moment to happen. It was just that wherever I was working, I was previously working at Sampi, and I had a little bit context about payments and digital payments infrastructure. One thing which I was curious about was the fact that women do not seamlessly, transact, or women are not very comfortable when it comes to personal finance. I really wanted to get validation of that idea, and I knew that okay, EY Scholarship is happening. So I think 1 month prior, I circulated this Google form just to get little market validation of the idea that do women really involve themselves into the capital side of things, wherein you talk about, I'll just give an example. There is P&L and there is balance sheet. Some people look at the P&L point of things, that is payments and receipts, right? So do women actually invest and take loans for themselves, or women only look at budgeting? And I found out that even though my target audience is really upper middle class and high class, but you wouldn't believe, it came as a shocker that the results of that Google form survey told me that only 5% of women invested. Only 1 or 2% of them had ever taken a personal loan for themselves. And that was a shock to me because this is the very niche segment I'm talking about. So I didn't know what the average would turn out to be if I had to take a survey to the lower middle class or the middle class. And I felt that, okay, there is a need to make finance easier for women, which my title of the case study also says. So I think that is when I felt that, okay, now I have an idea, I have a problem to solve, and here is the format of the competition, which very much allows me to do that. And I think that's how I got into EY Scholarship. So yeah, that's my introduction. Yeah.
All right, I'll go next. So firstly, thanks a lot, the Impact Project, for having me here. And thanks a lot for all of you to kind of join this webinar. Great to hear Shurni, yours, and Shruti, of course, yours idea. And now to tell a gist about mine. So basically, I had a for-profit idea in the health tech industry. So how I came about this idea, I had actually been working at Connecting Teams Foundation in the healthcare industry itself. So I knew for a fact that healthcare was something that was kind of very severely disrupted, both in terms of positive as well as negative during the pandemic. So what did I do was, so during the pandemic, of course, like as in, of course, we know that everything was shut off and so were gyms and like fitness and training centers and so on and so forth. So my idea was basically revolved around how an individual can kind of train and exercise at his home, at his or her or their home. So what I did was I basically made an AI-driven and a machine learning-driven technology application with the help of which, with the help of, let's say, even a smartphone camera and laptop camera, you could track 32 points in your body. So you would know if the exercise that you're doing it right or not. The second element that I added was that, of course, during the pandemic, of course, a lot of gym owners, trainers, personal trainers, they basically lost their job because of the pandemic. So I added this thing that they could also add their modules over the in the application, so that their modules is something that the trainees can do on by paying a minimum fee. So that is how kind of I came about this whole application. And yes, the idea kind of arise in my mind. Again, it was very random. I was watching a video on LinkedIn, and in that video, I kind of saw that you could track these 32 points in your body, and this was basically sort of an application of that. And then I went over the internet, I searched kind of what are the applications, and I got to know that there are not lot kind of there is not a lot that is being done in this particular field. So I thought, why not? And yes, that is how I kind of came up with the idea.
All right, that is all amazing to hear. So next up, we have a few questions we'd like to ask all three of you regarding the scholarship. So the first one, I think you guys have all touched base upon this, but if you could just, go in detail about your sources or resources that you used and where your idea actually originated from, what was the inspiration, and, just how you came across this idea, what was your inspiration?
Okay, so I'll go first. Okay, we are following that. Okay, cool. So, okay, so as I told you, I was already working on a primary research, like I was writing an academic paper. It was a primary research on small and marginal farmers, like farmers who have less than 5 hectares of land. Small marginal are who have less than 2 hectares of land, and smaller who have less than 5 hectares of land in India. So my research was like what are the behavioral patterns that small and marginal farmers exhibit that tell us that they are using informal sources of banking and not formal sources. Okay, so that research was conducted, like I was doing that already, and then EY scholarship came on, so I kind of made that case. I was just working on an idea, okay, this is the research, these are the reasons. But when I saw EY scholarship, I was like, okay, maybe I know what, like I have some idea, okay, what can be the solution to it. So let's add that. So that's how my idea originated, because I was already working on that part, and I'm deeply passionate about like how the money, this monetary system and everything affects the grassroots level, which it affects the most hardest actually. And so I started with that primary research. I had unstructured interviews. So unstructured interviews are a type, if anybody of you has been involved in qualitative research, unstructured interviews are where you asked open-ended questions. It's not a questionnaire, it's not a survey. Like Shunyam said, she mentioned a survey. So it has particular questions and answers and options or what you can. But unstructured interview is like, you have to gain trust of people to talk to you. Like there were certain elements, such as I was in a village, right? If I go in a village in an attire that I'm from a city, or if I am from a college, like they wouldn't trust me to tell me. They would be like, oh, who is she? How will she know? Like, okay, she's a kid. Why would she know what I'm facing? Like that's general sentiment that I felt when I talked to the farmers. They were like, who is she? Like this 18-year-old kid, what would she know? So that I had to, so I learned that the language is Braj Bhasha. If anybody of you from Rajasthan would know it, it's Braj Bhasha. So I had to learn a little bit of their dialect. I was like, okay, I'll talk to them in their language. I'll talk to them in a way that they feel probably I'm one of them and I'm able to, I can understand their problems. And then they opened up. And things such as, the person in the bank is, suit woot wala aadmi. I don't have the confidence to go to the bank and talk to him. Things such as, oh, the bank, I don't know if he can take loan. I think it was just for subsidies that I get. because subsidy is a very famous thing after Modi ji started it. So I was like, yeah, you can of course take a loan. Do you know? Oh, we get a loan at 3%. We didn't know that. Oh, the poster was in English. I can't read English. Oh, there was a poster. I can't read only. Like if the medium of the government is telling my posters on the Nagar Palika board, I can't read. What's the use of the posters? So these are like, I tried to like categorize all these things. Okay, these are the problems. Like these are small barriers. These are logistical barriers. And how can we overcome them? So solution to all these things was the origination of my idea. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'll go next. So basically, as I already mentioned, this was something that was particularly focused during the pandemic, and I guess pandemic was itself the biggest inspiration for me to come up with the idea. Other than that, I guess that's common with the three of us as well. I also did have my primary research, which was, of course, since it was a for-profit idea and for the privileged class of the society, so to say. Unfortunately, it was not something that I had to kind of go on ground, but really kind of I really liked it when Shruti you mentioned that you had to go on ground and if you interacted with all these people. It's really something good that you did. So coming back to what I was talking about, so I basically just kind of talked to a couple of my friends who had been working out, who were exercising, and a couple of fitness and training professionals as well, as to kind of analyze what impact had it been on them, and on their exercise kind of routine as well, and how kind of we can kind of bring about a change. And how is it that sitting at home, like everything actually was shifted online. But this was one major thing I feel that the lack of feedback that you get in an offline kind of working out session or something of that sort was not something that was being delivered. So the thing that these guys were doing was that it was simply kind of going on YouTube and kind of replicating the exact same thing that you see on these YouTube videos, the trainers that are doing those. But in that case, one major problem that there was that even in fact, if you don't kind of do it properly, you end up ruining it and you end up kind of negatively impacting your health. It was kind of one of the biggest challenge I had to kind of combat as to how do we analyze the exercise that we're doing, if the exercise that the trainees are doing it right or not, which is how this AI and machine learning thing came up to be. And yes, that was basically the origination of my idea. Just one last thing that I'd like to mention. So just a small tip basically. So basically every idea that I see, like even Shruti's and even Shunyan's idea, these are not just one single idea that you see. I guess these are kind of integration and modifications of one idea of one thought basically. So even my idea, and I guess that probably would be common across all the ideas of all the scholars and all the participants, so to say. So you constantly need to kind of upgrade and modify your idea and tweak to kind of integrate as many problems as you can to solve all of them at one single platform at one single time. So I guess that is how.
That's absolutely correct. Like through the stages you see, you have to modify, and it solves like it revolves around like banking also, agriculture also, a lot of things. So that's true. Like it cannot be single-minded.
Right, exactly. So that is one major thing that you have to see, and this is something that when you kind of go and analyze your idea, you would automatically be kind of doing all of these things. So it would not be kind of something that you would have to think or kind of ponder deeply upon. It would happen gradually, so to say. So yes, that's about it. Shunyam, over to you.
I think very similar experience as Anirudh and Shruti mentioned. It's just that one thing that I've noticed about an idea striking you is the fact that how observant are you when it comes to the ecosystem in general? Are you looking at if you're interested in agriculture for that matter, are you really touch basing upon the agony of the farmers? Are you aware of the situation they are in? So it's just about going deeper into the problem that you want to solve. An idea, I think, comes through the culmination of your overall experience or your overall observation. It's not that we had to sit someday and we had to think of an out of the box idea, which we completely had no commonality with. So I think one thing that is common in all three of our experiences is the fact that we related with it, we delved deeper into it, or we had read about it earlier, or we were passionate about it. Same goes with me. I think good ideas, one of my mentors once said, it's not very original one, or it's not something that comes out of the box or out of the blue. It's something that is, as Anirudh mentioned, is iterated upon. So I think a lot of times what I would do is just to find out, do we have a fintech for women, particularly in India? I couldn't find anyone. I could find Alpha, which is in US, I think. And I really tried to understand what is the problem that they're facing, what is the market share that they have, And I think that kind of knowledge base or that kind of research really helps you cover the loopholes that the founding team of probably that company did not find or they came upon after launching. So it's very important to have an eye for observation, an eye for detail. Try to, whatever it is that you're trying to build, if you find any similar thing or if you find any similar industry, try to read more about it. Try to find out and have an eye for where can I change. That can be a minor tweak, that can be a complete new product, or that can be just one feature that was missing so far in the world. So I think observation is important. Rest my process is very similar to what I told. So yeah.
All right, great. So the next thing that if you could shed light upon is your research, different stages of research, and what was the approach like, in depth. So yeah.
Okay, so first of all, as I said, first step was primary research, talking to the farmers, unstructured interviews, writing them down, making notes, categorizing. So as Shunyam perfectly put it out, like you have to delve deeper. Like the problem is not them not using formal source of banking. The problems came on later. Like when I dig deeper, okay, these small 100 little problems make that one problem. So yes, you have to delve deeper to get into that. So I did the primary research. Then I did the secondary research, which was how were the firms who are actually helping in this sector. So for example, not-for-profit businesses, there were a lot of businesses for financial literacy. This is a part of financial literacy basically. So there are a lot of NGOs working for it. Financial literacy, especially for women, for older, and then there are some NGOs who are working for farmers. But there are one little when I would see on the intersection of both, like where you would, okay, so I'll tell you, there comes my edge. Like what was the edge in my idea? So the edge in my idea was behavioral economics. So I used a concept from behavioral economics. It was randomized control trials. So basically, behavioral economics as a concept is very new. It is, if anybody of you, like if you are aware, you would know how much it's springing up and how important it is. When you are dealing with people, it is very important to see how people behave and how that affects the decision making. So my idea was, before so it's easy. If somebody doesn't know about it, just tell them. But when do you tell them? How do you tell them is what makes all the difference. It's the implementation, right? How do I implement it in the best way? So there is Sendil Mulyanthan. He is a big researcher. If you have seen JPAL lectures or Chicago Booth lectures, he talks about poverty. He talked about that, okay, though when the harvest is the harvest is in March and July, August, if you guys know, like that's, so main harvest to March, the one. Farmers are much more, they have much more capacity in their brain after the harvest. Okay, like that is the scientific research. The research says that their mind is more prone to learning new things. They have more space to think about more things, the poor people, when they have the harvest done. This is when they get their money. They don't have to think about what happens in the illness. They don't have to think, because they get the fresh money. They have this seasonal thing, right? These farmers. So March time and the like August, September time, when these are the two harvest time, post that is the best time to tell them a thing except money, because they have the money. They don't have to bother about money. So these are the behavioral, a lot of research like them. Like I have quoted a lot of research in my case as well. So that gives me when to tell them. Now, how to tell them? So I had to learn about idea. How to tell them? I have to tell them in the vernacular language. I have to speak to them. I don't have to write and paste it on the walls. That is wasted. Those pamphlets, everything, the cost of the pamphlets and everything is getting wasted because people are illiterate. A lot of people are in villages. So like these are just small examples of the total implementation part. But my research also involved inculcating a lot of new ideas that were not present yet in other NGOs. RCT, the randomized control trial that I was talking about, it says that you take two, if there is a village A and there is a village B, I would take two villages which are identical and I would try out, if anybody of you know what is placebo, like you do in trials, is anybody aware with placebo effect or something? It's like A and B. Yep. Okay, Mohena says yes. So it's basically A and B. We A and B ko dono ko problem hai. We give the medicine to A. We tell B that we have given the medicine, but we don't. And then we see if there is a difference in the person we have given the medicine. Same with this randomized control trial. I am oversimplifying the thing. Randomized control trial is a very, very long, complex process, but it's basically you take two identical villages, you test your strategy in one, you don't in the another, and you see the difference. If there is actually a difference, keeping all the things constant because of your strategy. And that is the trial that you conduct. And by conducting that trial, you are basically saving all the cost that would go away in just implementing it because you had an idea. Right. So that was the major part of my research, how I can inculcate the new ideas of behavioral economics so that I can make my implementation better and better, because ultimately it's about implementation, the idea. So, yeah.
I think very well condensed by Shruti. She has spoken on our behalf also. I don't have much to add there. But I think one general query that I received from a lot of participants and candidates was that them perceiving EY scholarship as a case competition, which is the difference between, I think, the level of research that you require in a business plan and a case competition. So case competitions are very research centric because you need to know the specificities of the market, the product, the competitors, so on and so forth. However, I feel that business plans, there's a fine trade-off between creativity and between research. You need to research about 2 to 3 things in general, that is about the market, the competitors, the problem, and the users. Rest, I think the solution, the implementation, the impact, which is your presentation, is all about your understanding of what the problem is, how the user wants it to be solved, how are the competitors solving it, and what is the general market that you're going to work in. So I think my only research was centered on customers, first of all, for which I floated like a questionnaire. I talked to like about 100, 150 people through the questionnaire, and of course later had some interviews with them. Later on, I think my understanding was that, okay, let me just pick out the best practices from the companies, probably in US or in the West. That was the only market research I did. And then generally understanding the CAGR of app economy, of fintech, all of that. So I think with that, I had enough vocabulary to convince the jury that, okay, I'm well versed with what I'm talking about. I have enough facts to back my solution with, and I know where I'm coming from. So I think you need to know the specificities of where are you going to operate with, who are you going to compete with, and who are you selling the product to ultimately. I think that's just the research you want. Rest is your creativity, your storyboard, your storytelling ability, and you can then nail a B plan. So I think that was my take on research.
Again, I guess both of Shruti and Shunya have kind of completely summed it up. Just one thing that the one different thing that I'd like to mention here, since mine was a little bit more, mine involved a little bit more of technology, was the fact that if you are kind of going ahead with the technology-driven application or any kind of business which has a lot of technology incorporated into it, something that has not been kind of talked about earlier as much. What I would suggest you to is to kind of find any kind of software on Google over the internet so that you can kind of back up whatever you're saying with some practical application of it. So this was one thing that I was kind of also this was one thing that I was doing actually during my presentation. And luckily I had this kind of software I found it over the internet as well. That actually did the exact same thing that I was talking about. It was basically it kind of could help me track the 32 points in the body. So I could show them that whatever research that I'm doing and kind of whatever technological research I'm doing, I'm backing up with proper research. And this was important for me particularly because I am from a commerce background, so I didn't have any kind of much deeper knowledge about science and technology, of course. So they wanted to know that of course, like there are two things to talk about here, the end as well as the means to end. So the end is what I'm proposing to them. But the means to end is also something that they would focus on, because of course, like you cannot just set a vision, you also have to kind of set a pathway to achieve the vision basically. So this was one thing that they mentioned that, and of course, like I had this thing over the internet. So this was one thing that also I feel kind of set the whole business idea apart. And this was one thing again that, really impressed them, so to say, because they were very happy and they didn't expect it. So just because I had it ready, they were kind of really, they felt really good about it, so to say. So, yeah.
All right. So what were the different segments covered in your solution? And is there any factor one should not miss out on specifically?
Okay, so first of all, the document that they give, they have this brief thing where they tell you what should be the sections. First of all, I think this year also that document must be there. Introduction of the firm, mission, objective. I think one slide is on competitors. What's the competitive landscape? One slide is on your first and second year implementation idea. Like what is your current 2-year plan? How you're going to implement it with the financials. Now, I think, with the financials, am I missing one slide? I think I'm missing one slide.
This
Impact
about
on the working world.
Yeah, impact. Yeah, the impact on the working world. Like, how is it going to change what's already there and what's different? And one slide, basically, you can. Look, I kind of converted it into my new point, which was using behavioral economics plus what was the impact. Like, I kind of made it one. So one thing that I would suggest is on financials. Do not just make a random P&L with numbers. I had reason for every number that I've put in. Now comes the guesstimates part. You guys, this is a consulting thing. You guys must be knowing about guesstimates and everything. You have to use guesstimates. Like every number, like the size of the land. So for example, I had to calculate about the fertilizers and everything. So it was like, what is the size of the land? What is the agricultural land? In the agricultural land, okay, what is the size in which how much fertilizer is used in a particular square kilometer? Like everything, every number in my profit and loss account was my income statement, basically, because mine was a not for profit, was backed by a reasoning, and I put all of them. And second thing, presentation. Your presentation cannot be the slides, but it has to be modern. Like it cannot be the slides we used to make in school. Okay, like bullet points and everything. Your whole slide, it's not header and body, it's the whole page. It's like a chart, a canvas that you have to make. It is about using do not ever write a bullet like normally. I would just, this is a suggestion, like presentation matters a lot. It's basically you are talking, but they're also looking at the screen. You know the whole background, but they don't. So make sure, see, first you send the slide, then you get selected, and then you are called for the interview. So the first and most important thing is everything that you want to communicate should be on that slide in a very communicable manner. And for that, I really I'm thankful for my friends and mentors. So I would send it to somebody who doesn't have an idea about your idea. Okay? Because your friends would sometimes probably know what you're working on. Ask somebody who is just not knowing anything about your idea and ask them, okay, are you understanding something from it? Tell me what you understand from it. Listen to their explanation of your work. And then you will know, okay, these are the different perspectives. My work is getting perceived in this way. I don't want it to get perceived in this way. Oh, this idea, I am assuming this idea would be known by people, but it's not. Maybe I need to include it. So it's very, very important to know what message is going through your slides. You have, I think 7 slides is the limit, I guess. And those 7 slides are 7 chart papers you have. And it's, do not like make it clean, make it beautiful. It has to be beautiful. It's not about the idea, it's about the presentation. And also from the financials part, presentation part, third is also implementation and sustainability. So for people who would be also for profit organization, but for non-profit organization, I would say it is very important for your business idea to be sustainable. By sustainable, I mean revenue stream. For a not-for-profit, you are not selling a product, you're not selling a service. From where are you getting the revenues? How will you get the funding? Like, how are you thinking that this business will last for more than 2 years after getting the funding? So that part, financial sustainability, and how will your business function because you aren't getting any revenue? That establishment is very, very important. Like one of the most important things for a not-for-profit idea, I would say. Over to you both.
Yeah, I think I'll take it up. I think there was not much that I had to add from my own. EY gives you a list of things, a checklist that has to be covered. There is, of course, a business model, but there's one thing that I'd like to add to the entire conversation. Why you win or why you stand apart from the other contestants is because you add some things which are your own, speciality to the entire thing, or maybe you go 1 mile ahead and try to probably make UX of your app if you're having any, or you try to add your customer reviews if you have any, or just the general way forward. If you have things like those, try to make a wireframe first. Try to have an index in your mind that, okay, these are things I want to cover. It's business. I want to cover on why am I innovating? Why am I bringing this product or service into being in the first place? So my problem. I want to cover about my solution. If my solution is detailed, if I have some features I want to talk about, which are different in the industry, then I want to dedicate one slide to my solution. I want to talk about competitive landscape. I want to talk about financials, and I want to talk about probably the impact and the implementation. Try to have an index, after which try to think about how are you going to narrate this story in a very innovative manner by adding some bit of your own creativity. What I did was I'm a little conversant with graphic designing and video editing. So I kind of made one working video of how, from one tab to another, would a person transact? How would the transaction process? How would that, UX look like? So I made a video of that and added in one of the presentation slides. And I think you are very short on the number of slides you can have. Even if you have to talk about the overall presentation, you can't talk beyond 10 minutes. So it has to be content less. It doesn't have to be content heavy, but it has to be information rich at the same time. So try to, as Shruti mentioned, convey all of the things which the judges are looking for. If they're looking for innovation, clarity, impact on the working world, so on and so forth, try to include these things on prio, and then look at what extra do you want to add to make your slide or your deck stand apart. So I think, those were the only things I looked after.
Firstly, really sorry for the inconvenience, and I guess Shruti and Shunya must have summed it up on me. Just one or two things that I'd like to mention here. So again, I guess as Shruti mentioned, there are two different kind of, the first round is basically when you have to submit a 7-deck PPT. And in this PPT, of course, like there is no physical interaction. You are not communicating anything verbally. So it's very important for you to sum up and to kind of cover everything that you have to mention, so that the one who is reviewing it actually gets to know what exactly is it that you're kind of trying to convey. But when we talk about the second and the final presentation, which is in front of the partners, I think that the format and the style of presentation completely changes. In this way, you don't have to kind of necessarily communicate everything that you have to say on the presentation, on the slide itself. You can tweak and change your presentation a little as accordingly to the things that you want to say. And I guess that is where kind of the trick happens. Because of course, if there's so much of content on your screen for the judges, for the partners to see, they would not probably focus more on what you're saying, and they would rather focus on the presentation. So this is another tip. And of course, you can include videos, images. Of course, these are very common. That's all.
Okay, that's great stuff. And for the next question, what, according to you, are the most important judgment criteria?
I have a very simple one for this, so I'll just cover it up in a jiffy. It's just what they're looking for. I mean, definitely it's a presentation, your idea, all of those things, but the most important judgment criteria is very clearly given by them. It's clarity of thought, innovation, and I think impact on the working world. And one more, I'm forgetting that one. But try to, answer this question in your PPT as well as in your oral presentation before they ask you. So what I would do was, before jumping into the slide, I would say, why am I, making this, and why the users will prefer my product over the others? Here is da 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 da. So you try to answer their question before they're actually, going to ask. That will do 50% of their job. And your 5 minutes of Q&A will then become a free-flowing conversation between the jury and you, because you have covered all the criteria that they were looking for. So I think that was just my simple take on this one. Over to you both.
That's true. Actually, so what she said, like 100% agreeing with that. Also, they're looking for a problem that is there. You need to identification of the problem and presenting, like you need to identify a problem that exists. Like it can't be anything random. you need to find a solution, and you need to validate your solution from the process, like the whole process of implementation. And why your process? So, okay, you have to validate the solution by the process. You have to validate the process by all the findings that you can get from your primary research or secondary research. So basically, if your implementation process, like what she said, impact, it's so important. If you do not have an implementation process which is practical, there would be no impact. Like, I can't just say anything. I can't be like, I'll just go to the farmers, I'll tell them that don't use the Sahukar's money, just use the bank. No, they will not do that, right? I have to present it. I have to think of the idea in a way that is practical. So how do you show your market competition when you are presenting a not-for-profit idea? You show your market. So for example, you show your market competition by the NGOs that are working for, I'm so sorry, just so sorry for the disturbance. So I was talking about, so market competition is, okay, who are the NGOs that are working to making farmers more literate? Okay. Now, there can be some who are making them literate about the government policies. Some are making them literate as in numeracy. Like, literacy has a lot of definitions. Literacy is not just knowing how to read. Some are working towards financial literacy. So my competition was a mix of all these things, because there was not one that's how my idea is different, right? There was not a single firm that was doing exactly what I was doing. So basically, you talk about them, what is their model? I made a table basically. These are the firms. Their objective is A, B, C, D. That is. Yeah. Yeah, you do have to name the NGOs. You do have to. Okay, so competition is basically so you're presenting a case, right? You have to use the actual values, actual everything. Like, whoever asked that question, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Yeah, you have to name the NGOs. Yes, you have to tell about their model, how they work.
All right. I think we can move to the next question, which is an interesting one. What was the process like after your solution got shortlisted?
I think there used to be long pauses of us waiting just first for the results. Then that was announced on Instagram as well as email that okay, these are the 50 people candidates who are going to the finale. Then you get a couple of calls from the web professionals telling you about, okay, this is the date of your presentation. You have 10 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for Q&A, all the best, all of that. That is then took 1 and 2 months of its own. And then in June, probably, or in May, we had our presentation scheduled. After the final presentation is over, you just wait for, hearing back if you're selected, if you're one of the top 10 or not. So yeah, lots of like long months of no communication and pauses and just you waiting. Yeah.
All right. And so how can a participant...
Actually, I'm so sorry. I would like to add one thing to this.
Sure.
Like she said, there is this long waiting period and everything. Like, I gave up. I gave up after giving my presentation because I think they grill you. They genuinely grill you in the interview. I presented everything and I was like, okay, I'm awesome. I did everything right, what I planned. And then they were trying to make me fluster basically. Okay, that they were doubting me, my everything. But the main point is you should know about everything that's on your slide and everything that's not. Like, they can ask anything. And you can not have every answer, but you should have the confidence that, okay, I don't have this answer, but probably this doesn't even apply to my case. Like, you should have the confidence key. I know that I'm prepared for it. And you can probably leave it to God or anybody else after that presentation for sure.
All right, I guess we have another question. If the results are in June, when is the internship scheduled? So I guess this is something that for this year particularly, they got it really, really delayed. I guess the initial deadline was December 31st, but then it got extended to January 31st. But other than that, I guess it's usually like now, I guess it's the same. And this year at least, let's hope that they would be on time. And an internship would be in the summers only, most probably. But of course, it's CY, you can expect delays, lots of it. And yes, that's, I guess, hope it answers the question. And I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. I don't know what is happening with that laptop. So.
No worries, we've all been there. Yeah, so the next question, how do I set myself apart? How do I make myself unique? How do I make myself stand apart for all the judges to see?
I think for that, you should know what's not there. And for you to know what's not already there, you need heavy research. You need to know your area, your sector inside out. Like, I think everybody, like Anirudh, Shunyam, both have talked about like their surveys and the way they have researched, and similar with my idea. You have to be so thorough to know what's not there. Like she talked about what are the gaps in the already existing firms. So basically, something that would set apart your idea is also your problem identification, because there are, I won't say that there is anybody solving a problem that's not already being tried to be solved. I mean, everybody's solving something in this world today. Like, but how you would make your idea different is what's your point of view, like what's your perspective of the problem, how it's making the impact. Like, for example, in my case, it is making not only an impact on the farmers, but also on the banks. Like, banks do not open their branches because they know that they don't have the demand. And like I've seen in my areas, banks are opening. Like 10 years ago, there was just PNB. Today in my town, there is PNB, Axis Bank, Bank of Baroda, HDFC. That is growth. Like, so it's not just impact on one thing. You have to see the whole ecosystem. Like, what's your perspective towards this? And that is what makes you unique, in my view. Like, yeah, that's it.
I guess adding on to that, again, I guess I'm just reiterating it, the clarity of whatever you're saying and whatever you have on your presentation, I guess is something that kind of would set you apart. Plus, it's your vision, so to say. Again, as I already mentioned, the means to end as well as the end. The end, I feel, is more important because, of course, they are not looking. And yes, this is also one of the questions that I do really get in my LinkedIn DMs, that if this is something that you have to have a really learning, if you have to have a running business model, is this something that they're incubating it, or would there be kind of mentorship sessions in the end after if you kind of end the program? Nothing of this sort. But again, what really helps you is to think that the partners that you're presenting it in front of are VCs, are venture capitalists, and they're looking forward, and you're looking forward for them to invest in your business. So if you kind of look at it at that perspective, I guess that you would kind of a whole new perspective would kind of come into picture, and that is how you can set yourself apart. And yes, I guess Shruti has mostly summed it up. Over to you, Shruti.
Yeah, I think nothing much to add there. Just two things that I feel that can make you simply stand apart. First of all, answering before they ask. That is, quoting you. Your deck is definitely talking about the what's. What is your solution? What is the problem? But answer the why before they ask you. Why is the solution the best one? Why am I targeting this person? And why am I targeting this target group? And so on and so forth. I think that really helps me, and that has something I've seen, that answering before somebody asks you is going to take you a long way in case solving or B plans, because then you leave a room for discussion, then you leave a room for them getting to know you, where the idea originated from, and then it becomes like a chill conversation laterward. And the second thing is definitely picking a problem which resonates with you, something which is closer home, something you feel that you are comfortable about. Or if I'm probably in a group of 10 people, then I know more about that one problem than the others. That is your own competitive mode. So find your mode and try to build on that, double down on that mode, and that will show up very clearly, because whatever they're asking you, you will have larger context, you will have credibility to prove that. And that really takes you a long way. So I think try to pick places where you're comfortable talking about, comfortable researching, and you have had a share of experience or just simple inclination towards that field. That is, I think these are the two things I could think of.
Just one more thing that I would like to add here. So what also really helps, and it really did help me, is if you try to, whosoever kind of is reviewing, whosoever is on the other end of the table or the screen, so to say, make sure that that person actually feel that that person himself, herself, or themselves is the customer, is your target audience. And if you would make sure that that person kind of, if this happens in the first, second slide of your presentation, this would really kind of go a long way in kind of easing up all the questions and there would not be any questions if the person sitting in front of you feels that yes, this is actually a problem. So what I did was I kind of made this whole slide wherein I had newspaper reports, personal accounts of all the kind of people that I was targeting. Actually, I was actually targeting towards. So this really made sure that they do also understand the situation as well as I do it. So yeah, this is something that also could help.
All right. So now let's talk about the internship experience at EY, and if you could shed some light on which field you worked upon and so forth.
I didn't do the internship because when the results came 1 month later, I was just joining my company. Like I presented in my 3rd year. So I had to join my company. So I didn't do the internship. So not the right person.
Yeah, I think Anirudh is the person here in the room to talk about it. I'll be joining as an investment banking intern in the EY strategy and transactions team in January. I couldn't take my internship during the stint that they were providing it for. I was interning somewhere else. But yeah, same, I think, experience Anirudh has had, like the same team at least. So he can talk more about it.
Yes, so EY gives you this privilege to kind of choose any business line, any sub-business line as well where you want to intern. So from their 4 business line, I guess, taxation, accountancy, then it's EY private equity and EY consulting, I guess. I don't think I'm missing out on anything, but if Shunyam and Shruti, if I'm, of course, feel free to add. So from these 4 business line, you can choose either of these, and you can choose any sub business line as well of your choice. And Sunil rightly mentioned, I took the strategy and transactions when I interned at their corporate finance and investment banking team. And my experience, since I was an intern, and of course, like private equity basically is of course generally a team of very small, a small team basically. So the internship started on, and it was really difficult to manage because at that time my placement processes were also going on. But the team actually did make sure that they do take proper efforts in kind of having you on board, right, as a team member. And about the internship, so since it was in private equity, there was a lot of research and presentation involved. You had to research. I had basically worked on 2 different problem statements. I'm really sorry, I was focusing on something else. You can basically, I was working on 2 different problem statements, wherein one was about finding out the market sizing, and the other one was about finding the right investment kind of sources for this company. And then the experience, so to say, was very different because I had not worked in private equity domain, so to say. And they actually make you do the same work that they are doing. So you are in direct contact with the managing director and the vice president of that particular business line directly as a reporting manager. Plus, of course, their senior associates and analysts were you constantly in touch with. So the experience is good. And yes, it's basically a very fast-paced working environment. And it's, of course, it's better if it's online. But if it is, of course, better if it's offline, but unfortunately, I had to do it online. So yes, I guess that pretty much sums it all up.
All right. So we have the last question in front of us, and that is, what is one important piece of advice that you haven't yet mentioned to participants who are new to case solving and wish to participate?
I guess the biggest advice here would not be to, as I guess Shunim already mentioned, would not be to consider it as a case itself. It is to consider it as a normal businessman competition. And to, I don't think so there's anything that I haven't mentioned before, or the 3 of us haven't really mentioned before. But the one thing that I would say is would be to properly kind of see what you're saying and be very thorough with it. I guess that's the one tip that works. And if also you could basically substantiate whatever research that you're doing with proper examples. And yeah, I guess that would be it. Nothing much to add.
I think one thing that along the process we see is that we try to doubt our idea. Other people try to doubt our idea. And it's like, it was a long journey for me because pandemic happened. And I think somebody asked question, how do you do primary research in the pandemic? I did not. I submitted my idea during the pandemic while a competition cycle, but I did it before, like, because I was already doing that research. So no matter what, if you have decided that you are going into this competition with an idea, just go for it. Like, it would mean no harm. I know that the motivational constraints that I got in, like, a lot of times, I was like, okay, probably I should drop this idea, not worth it. People are having this idea, that idea. Just just go with it, and it would be no harm. Like, you will only learn from this process, whether you win or lose. You'll just learn tremendously. So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I think they have both covered it up. Just like again, touch basing on case competitions and not so much about business plans. I think it's very important that case solving in DU, I've seen it's little underestimated right now. It's not something which is very viral, and especially in Shaheed Sukhdev, that's the hotspot of case competitions, what I've noticed from the DU culture. But I think if you are somebody who wants to really dive into case solving and case competitions, which is a different, I think, completely different ballgame than business plan competitions, you should definitely seek out for a community. Probably have a team of case solvers. Try to talk to people who have won cases before. There is HSBC, there are a lot of competitions. Try to join a community. I was a part of CCC earlier. Try to join Case Connect clubs or all of these case solving clubs and try to get the hang of the frameworks, because it's all about frameworks. What they're trying to do is a skill that you can develop and learn. So everybody who was asking me about whether EY competition is a case competition or not, it's not. Case competitions are one where you're given a problem statement and you have to solve and provide a recommendation. So for that, it's very important that you try to include and incorporate that framework early on. So yeah, I think that was my only 2 cents on case competitions.
All right. For the last part of the entire discussion, we'd like to open the floor for questions from the audience. We'll be only taking a few questions. So whoever's interested in asking, please raise your hands. We'll be taking your names and you can ask your question.
Actually, I would just like to say that I was in the middle of my office and I just took 1 hour. So I will have to leave now. But anybody, like, reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's my name, Shruti Agarwal. You will find me easily so just text me. I can probably talk with you if you have any issues. I'll just have to leave now. I'm so sorry. But it was great talking to you and learning about ideas of other people. I had no idea what were everybody else's ideas who won. So it was great. Thank you so much.
Really, thank you, Shruti, for joining us today. We learned a lot from you. And
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Yeah, I guess we can take the first question from Ria.
Hi, just a quick confirmation. Am I clearly audible?
Yeah.
First thing first, this was a great session. It was so enlightening. Thank you so much for doing this. My question revolves around basically, so in case if there's a cause which is particularly repetitive and we know it from the back of our mind that it is, how did you particularly identify the modification? Like Anirudh said that you will have to modify your cause and then finally get to the particular conclusion. And Sriram also mentioned that you'll have to identify the specialty. So how is the process? Like how did you find about the repetitiveness and how did you modify that?
Right. So yes, you were audible, and just to kind of simply put it up, of course, I'm quoting Peter Thiel here. So there are two ways to go about it. Either you go from 0 to 1, which is basically that you build a completely new idea, completely new business from scratch on your own, which is of course very much difficult as if you go from 1 to n, right? So by 1 to n, I mean kind of changing the existing things a little and kind of making your own kind of new solution out of it. So one way of kind of standing yourself apart and kind of to answer your question, you constantly do it by analyzing how are the dynamics of the environment changing and what all could you incorporate it. Even if you're going with a 1 to n thing, how many ones could you basically incorporate it in your business proposition? So if you only have a solution for, let's say, one problem, like I had for kind of revolutionizing the exercise routine, how can I also make sure that I also cater to one more addition problem? Or if I'm kind of also catering to that one, how can I widen the horizon of my business model? And this is not something that would kind of strike you at the very first go. You would have to constantly think, absorb, and once you kind of take a deep dive into that industry, you would automatically kind of be up or be in pace with whatever is happening. And that is how kind of you go about it. There's no kind of a strict stringent formula. And I guess Shunya, if there's something that you would like to add.
I think you've covered everything.
All right. Next up, Ravleen, you can go ahead and ask.
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah, you're.
Okay, so Shruti mentioned earlier that your presentation should not contain bullets and should not be really text heavy, but should be more graphic in the sense that it should contain analytical perspectives, like maybe a competitive analysis or a SWOT analysis. Basically, tables and structures should. I think I derived that from her, that tables and structures should be more relevant. um so how do we back our financials with without actually writing text, without actually making it text specific? And uh, another question which is similar to this: what other things can we incorporate apart from the things that you mentioned? Like I mean, I did understand the fact that problem and implementation are important, but what apart from text and graphics and UX should we put in to make it completely like a storyboard for the competition?
I'll take that up. I think, Ravleen, it's very important that your deck definitely communicates what you want to tell to a layman, because the person reading it does not have any context about the idea or the problem. But at the same time, try to keep things in a very framework sort of a, try to have a structure in place. What I used to do was I used to like double down on some, models made by my own self, something like 3C analysis, PEST analysis, PEC analysis, which is social, political, economic, cultural. Here, what I do is I convey things that I want to talk about. Like I want to show that, okay, my solution is focusing on all four aspects of the society: social, political, economic, cultural, whatever. What I used to do was, having that analysis in place, I used to just write one to two more things in that same flowchart. So my PPT used to be all about text, flowcharts, few numbers here and there. If I want to talk about the market size, I would talk about probably the CAGR in the market, probably the women that I'm targeting, the user base that I'm targeting, so on and so forth. So try to keep it condensed to flowcharts, to models, whichever you can think of. If you have no model in place, try to create one like 3R, 3C, anything that you can, go crazy with in terms of ideas. And then I think the other part is definitely talking more and trying to keep it content less, like content light and information, which as I mentioned earlier. And I think that was the only question that you had. I hope I'm not missing anything.